Okay, so teenagers finding sugar daddies in middle of Tokyo. Apparently, Japan has a serious homeless problem. We got to talk about it. We're going to be serious.
Even worse, a homeless problem applying to mere teenagers who have yet to even reach the age of adulthood.
I'll shout out to the channel, Japan Explained. Very educational. Definitely check it out. If you haven't subscribed to that already, do so. It's good.
These teenagers, known largely as Toyoko kids, primarily hang out within the Kabukicho area of Tokyo, which is largely regarded as Japan's biggest red light district.
Homeless teenagers going to the red light district. What could go wrong there? What could possibly go wrong there? And I said it before, Japan does have a trafficking problem. Japan does have some seedy issues, but people look at the surface and be like, oh, but it's low crime, low reported rates of whatever. But that's based on what's reported. There's a lot that goes on that's not reported, okay? It's to save face, to look good, okay? That's kind of what it is. I'm not trying to be mean or criticize. I'm just speaking honestly, the truth about it. There is an issue. There's an issue of trafficking and abuse of minors in Japan. You could say every country has that issue. Sure, yeah, right. And more or less, every country kind of has a way of kind of like, I guess, burying it or, looking the other way or kind of to minimize it. But all I'm saying is that, yeah, there definitely is an issue. And people say, oh, there's no issue. Well, there is an issue. Anyway.
From the first sight, the biggest red light district of the entire nation seems to be the polar opposite of what you would consider as a suitable place of shelter for mere teenagers who are physically, psychologically, and financially vulnerable. So in today's video, we will be discussing why such a phenomenon has emerged in Japan and what could potentially be done in order to make matters improve. So let's get into it.
All right, check out their book.
These kids, at least from the most visible facade when they all gather around the Toyoko Square together, seem relatively harmless. Many of them, in fact, possess a large following on social media platforms such as TikTok, which is widely popular among teenagers on a global basis. Their unique sense of fashion has also been a topic of discussion for many as well. They primarily wear dark makeup and clothes, while somehow still place.
So they're members of Necromon Idol? Are they members of an alt idol band?
Importance in maintaining the prototypical Japanese pursuit towards the kawaii. But while their physical appearance, as well as their uploaded dances on TikTok may seem relatively innocent, their actions and general path of life in which they are often forced to take as homeless teenagers is nowhere near that of innocent. We have to take into consideration.
Look at the bags under her eyes. She hasn't slept for days. Japan doesn't have a drug problem, as far as I understand. Damn. Like, she needs to get some sleep.
That most of these teenagers are still under the legal age of adulthood, meaning that they are most often legally not allowed to work at normal jobs. So most of them, unfortunately, resort to the darker path in order to provide a living for themselves, such as in underage dating, prostitution, or fraud. Teenagers, most of whom are far from.
We are still 11? Are you kidding me? Clean that up. Clean that up. That's on your streets. Clean that up. Put them somewhere. Put them somewhere.
Still being psychologically stable and mature, being forced into such black market jobs can obviously lead to the exacerbation.
Wait, do they not have like foster homes or some sort of foster program to take these neglected kids if they're running away from home because it's like abusive or something over at home or whatever? Okay, like what is? I guess they don't have those programs. That's weird. I saw the Netflix the recent, was it Ju-on or The Grudge? Wait, that's the same thing, huh? I remember in that series they had the like it looked like the Japanese equivalent of CPS, Child Protective Services.
Of their already vulnerable mental states. as well as exploitation of various kinds. And because of these psychocriminals who take advantage of these vulnerable teenagers, these kids are often catalyzed to commit mistakes in which they cannot return from. These include acts such as jumping off from hotel buildings in order to commit suicide, or lynching a homeless man to death. A business
Well, those are two really bad things.
hotel
Okay.
chain located in Kabukicho recently in fact gained notoriety
Is that the
from
hotel building?
frequencies in which the teenagers made the very decision to take their own lives from within the rooms of the building.
Wow. That is a high.
So how can Japan
drop.
go about in being able to fix such tragic problem of teenage homelessness? First, focusing on the fundamental source of problem seems to be the most important. And that fundamental problem in this case is the problem of domestic abuse and violence.
I bet you it's something that they sweep under the rug too. Pretend like nothing happens. I'd be like, no, there's no way we have domestic violence issues. No way. We're not even talking about it. Don't talk about it. It's going to worry people. Just keep it hush hush.
When asked for the reason as to why they chose to leave their homes, most Toyoko kids stated the reasons of physical or psychological abuse conducted by their parents or siblings. But the Japanese society, which takes the phrase seeing is believing to a whole another level, places tremendous emphasis on playing the game of whack-a-mole rather than fixing the fundamental issue. First, it attempts to prevent the mole from ever popping up in the first place. This means that the first priority of the Japanese society when dealing with the rather uncomfortable issue of domestic violence is to attempt to keep such uncomfortable issue from reaching one's cognizance in the first place by getting rid of it from sight.
Yeah, if you don't know about the problem, okay, don't talk about the problem. Don't bring awareness to it. You know, we're just gonna pretend like it doesn't exist.
Let me give you an example. The neighborhood of Aoyama, located in the much sought Monatoku area of Tokyo, is known to be one of the most upscale, luxurious neighborhoods in the entirety of Japan, with many celebrities and notable figures claiming the neighborhood as their very homes. And when the Minatoku local government purchased a portion of land in order to utilize it as a center for disadvantaged children and provide support for victims
Wait, so they do have programs, social programs like that for kids. Okay.
of domestic violence, instead of embracing the idea, many of the local residents filed group complaints. One of the sources of complaint being
They do that stuff here in the West, in America. If there's some sort of rich neighborhood and they find out that a homeless shelter is going to be propped up nearby, they shut that stuff down. They shut it down. You know? And the same people that shut it down, they'll go on Twitter and be like, oh, we need to do something about the homeless. But as soon as like, okay, well, we'll create a center near your neighborhood, they're like, oh, no, we don't want that. Why is that? Tell me. You already know why.
the quote-unquote the inappropriateness of having a center for disadvantaged youth and families in one of the country's most luxurious retail and residential districts. This instance is what defines the first stage of the Japanese whack-a-mole culture, which is again
Is that an official thing? Whack-a-mole culture, Japan whack-a-mole culture. Oh, you're just a bunch of whack-a-moles. That sounds bad the way I said it. Oh, you're a bunch of whack-a-moles.
Injecting their very best efforts in preventing the mole from popping up in the first place as much as possible. How dare the Minato local government bring unpleasantries such as disadvantaged youth and domestic violence to the
Yeah,
nation's
don't even talk about it, man. If you don't talk about it, it's not an issue, okay?
most sought after address of Minami Aoyama. But regardless of how much you initially try to prevent these moles from ever popping up in the first place, some moles will inevitably pop up into existence as long as they exist, just in the case of the Toyoko kids who have made their very emergence in the middle of the nation's biggest red light district. And you'd be surprised to know that once these moles do pop up, Japan as a nation does
How far does it go, too, is my question. If you have these underage or these kids popping up in a red light district and you know what's going on there, you know there's a reason why they flock to that area. There's a reason, you know. Okay, they're selling their body for money. Okay, they're selling their body for money. How far does it go? Who are the clients? Who are paying? Who are compensating these minors, these kids? And how far does it go? Is it businessmen? Is it rich and powerful businessmen? Is it authorities? Could it be politicians? How far does it go? Okay.
Does a pretty good job in whacking them all, as in attempting to solve the problem at least on a superficial, visible note. For instance, after the Toyoko homeless kids in the middle of Kabukicho became a nationwide issue, the Tokyo Metropolitan Police swiftly implemented extensive measures in patrolling the site where the Toyoko kids mainly gather and telling the teenagers to return back home.
Yeah, just return back home.
The conspicuous problem with such measures is that most of these very teenagers are out on the streets.
And they're probably, the officers are probably like superficial about it. Just go back home. Just go back home. Oh, so what, you don't like your dad? You don't like your mom? Well, a lot of us don't, It's tough love. Go back home. Okay, and what could really be happening there is maybe some legit abuse.
Because their very homes are a place where they do not feel physically and mentally safe, and thus cannot stay. But as affairs which happens in domestic domains are invisible to the public eye, this is out of their concern. And unfortunately, many of these homeless teenagers who are desperate for money are actually often turning to take advantage of such whack-a-mole style of justice system which dominates Japan. For example, Sekiguchi, who was actually a member of a volunteer group which was created in order to help out the other Toyoko kids, had different intentions in mind.
Okay.
It turned out that he often threatened adult men and claimed that they had slept with minor-aged girls, and that if they are not to pay the desired sum of money, he would report their conduct to the police. And most men in Japan, well knowing that the Japanese justice system often prosecute and find guilty of sexual crimes, often with no evidence but with words of the woman alone, resorted to paying Sekiguchi. Sekiguchi was later arrested for the murder of a man at the roof of a building located in Kabukicho in 2021.
Well, that's an interesting scam.
First, prevent them all from ever surfacing and popping up to the publicly visible domain.
Normally, you would think it would be like another woman to be, trying to blackmail someone like that. Be like, oh, I'm gonna out you as as a rapist, as a sexual abuser, or whatever. Without evidence, without any claim. That's what that guy was doing. That's what that minor was doing, apparently.
As much as possible and whack the hell out of the mole that has inevitably visibly surfaced and eliminated from sight as fast as possible. This type of culture may indeed be effective at providing short-term fixes, as well as provide an image to the public eye that government and law officials in Japan are doing something in order to fix social issues such as homeless teenage Toyoko kids. However, if no proper, genuine measures are implemented in order to deal with the fundamental issues that creates these societal moles in the first place, such troubling issues, as in the case of the homeless teenage Toyoko kids, will unfortunately continue to, quote-unquote, pop up in the Japanese society. So rather than taking the easy road of merely closing one's eyes in denial and rejecting unpleasant notions such as domestic violence from ever being near our physical proximity as well as cognizance in the first place, which can be seen through many example instances in Japan, such as, again, the continuous group complaints and voice of dissident shown by the nation's well-off residents of Minami Aoyama towards the opening up of a domestic violence help center within their very neighborhood. We first have to take the hard but the right road in accepting that lamentable phenomenons such as domestic violence is
Okay, so, and that makes sense. I mean, there is an issue of teenagers going to these cities, to the red light district because there's abuse at home. Okay, they're running away from home. They're runaway teens. So maybe take care of that issue. But unfortunately, in Japanese society, they're not willing to even talk about that issue, to pretend like abuse and domestic violence doesn't even happen. That's the opposite thing here. I mean, it's all over the place. Someone could just say you were an abuser and like the court will rake you will take everything you're worth, even if there's no proof. Wow. Serious, right? Serious. Let me know what you think about that.